Hey everybody, I hope you're doing well. Paul tells us in Galatians 5 and verse 13 and following, "For you were called to freedom, brothers. Only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. For the whole law is fulfilled in one word: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. But if you bite and devour one another, watch out that you are not consumed by one another." This is a particular time right now that we are experiencing of heightened emotions and opinions. And I have seen within the church, not just now, for many years, but especially right now, biting and devouring and consuming. This is something that I've been working on for years myself, as I was getting caught up in a lot of what the flesh was convincing me to do. Now, I began to think, what do Christians really need to do for each other right now? What do we need from each other right now? And a lot of these answers that I want to give as I answer this question, they definitely have to do with how we need to treat each other in person, but especially online, especially in social media. And so I'm going to answer the question, what do we need from each other right now? I'm going to go through these quickly. Number one, we need to pray for one another. James 5:16. We need to lift each other up to God and pray that He will bless each other. The people that are rubbing you the wrong way, they're a little abrasive, or that you find yourself at odds with, pray for that person. This is one of the easiest ways that we can show that we love someone, and it's just between you and God. It's you resolving between you and God that I'm going to love this person, and whatever I do is going to be motivated by love for them. Number two, we need to think the best of people. We need to give the benefit of the doubt. When we do this, it will give us pause when we think about chiming in with our opinion. 1 Corinthians 13:7, Paul says, "Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things." It's thinking and hoping the best of someone. It's giving them the benefit of the doubt, giving them some time to prove whether or not what you suspect may be true really is true. And I'll get to that in just a little while. Number three, we need to show grace to one another. We need to bear with one another. Paul says in Ephesians 4, starting verse 1, "I therefore, a prisoner for the Lord, urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you've been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace." Humility, gentleness, or meekness, the word there. Through those, we can bear with one another. Paul is talking about unity here. He said, we are the family of God. We bear with family members. God is not impressed when we can be gracious and bear with others when we're not at odds with them. It's precisely the times that people need us to show grace that it's the hardest time for us to show grace. And so that's what we need to do. Number three, show grace. Number four, we need to seek peace and pursue it. Quoting from the Old Testament, Peter says this in 1 Peter 3:11. We need to ask ourselves the question, how can I act in any given situation that will bring about peace? What am I doing to be a peacemaker? We got to remember that Paul in 2 Corinthians 5:18 says that we have been given the ministry of reconciliation. We need to have a goal of unity, of reconciling people in their relationships, of being peacemakers. Number five goes along with it. Avoid being divisive. Avoid contentious talk. In the works of the flesh, or things that are an outpouring of the flesh or a giving into the flesh, in the works of the flesh that Paul lists in Galatians 5:19 and 20, a couple of those are dissensions and divisions. It is this thing that we are prone to do because of ego or pride, or seeking to puff out our chest, or wanting to show ourselves better than someone else and feeling superior to someone, that causes us to be divisive. We need to ask ourselves the question, do these words that I'm going to use, or this strategy that I'm going to use, do they bring peace? We don't need to give a counterpoint to everything that we find to be at odds with online. Just because you see something online and you think, you know what, I don't really quite agree with that, you don't need to chime in. We are not that important that everybody needs to know our opinion. We need to avoid being divisive. Number 6, don't bulldoze people's consciences just because you think you're right. Don't bulldoze people's consciences. Romans 14, really I encourage you to read the whole chapter, but starting in verse 13, Paul says, "Therefore let us not pass judgment on one another any longer, but rather decide never to put a stumbling block or hindrance in the way of a brother." Of course, he's talking about within the context of eating meat offered to idols that younger Christians would think is evil, right? He says in verse 14, "I know and am persuaded in the Lord that nothing is unclean in itself, but it is unclean for anyone who thinks it unclean. For if your brother is grieved by what you eat, you are no longer walking in love. But by what you eat, this is important, by what you eat, do not destroy the one for whom Christ died." Don't bulldoze consciences. When we do this, we disrupt people's faith and we make them think evil of us. We make them think that we're evil. Number 7, don't participate in every argument you're invited to participate in. Most of the time, it is wise to just pass. Proverbs 26 and verse 4, "Answer not a fool according to his folly, lest you be like him yourself." Sometimes you have to see, is this person just trying to be divisive? Are they just trying to be egotistical and self-centered and show their opinion, and that's really all they care about? Are they interested in exchanging ideas or really learning? A lot of times we can tell pretty quickly, and it's best just to pass instead of giving in to the flesh and participating in the divisive and destructive behavior with them. But of course, verse 5 says, "Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own eyes." Which brings us to number 8. Number 8 is, if you think someone is truly wrong, go to them privately. Think Priscilla and Aquila with Apollos. They took him aside privately. Public confrontation can humiliate people and frustrate someone. It can ruin any chance that you will actually have an exchange of ideas. It can ruin any chance that you can actually have a relationship with them. And so a rule of thumb as far as confronting someone, if it's important enough to confront them, do it in private. If you're not willing to do it in private, then just keep your mouth shut. If you do that in private, then they will understand, number one, you don't have any interest in humiliating them. And it will show them that you are operating out of a genuine motive of love for them, and it will enrich your relationship with them. Number 9, as a lot of churches are making decisions about reopening, and a lot of them are doing things differently, it can be whether it's people from afar or people at our home congregation, we can get frustrated and we can seem at odds with people. But number 9, I would say, don't give your leaders grief. Don't give them grief. They're doing their best. They're trying to do things in the wisest way they can. They are prayerfully making decisions, trying to use good judgment. They're losing sleep over this. That's exactly what the Hebrew writer says in Hebrews 13:17. He says, "Obey your leaders and submit to them, for they are keeping watch over your souls as those who will have to give an account. Let them do this with joy and not with groaning, for that would be of no advantage to you." They're keeping watch over your souls. Or it could also be translated, they are awake at night. Our leaders are losing sleep over this. And one of the easiest ways that they can be a blessing to us is if we first are a blessing to them. Number 10, cherish the body of Christ. We need to cherish the body of Christ. We need to understand that the body of Christ is nothing to be trifled with or treated in a flippant way. We need to cherish the body of Christ, the church, in such a way that it tempers and measures our words. It gives us pause when we feel like we're going to say something that could disrupt it or harm it or divide it. When we understand what is at stake here, that will cause us to use wisdom and to avoid saying things that we shouldn't say. We need to ask ourselves the question, will the words or the actions that I'm going to use, will they tear down or will they build up the church? Will these words or actions unify or divide the church? Number 11, glorify your Father who is in heaven. You need to ask yourself the question, are the words, actions, strategies, the way they interact with people within the church, does it glorify the Father? Does it glorify Him before men through what I'm doing or not? Number 12, remember who you are. When I was young and I would go out and leave the house, my mom would always tell me, remember who you are. What does that mean? You're a Christian. You don't represent yourself. In fact, you don't belong to yourself. You're a Christian. You're a citizen of heaven. You are a part of a kingdom that is not of this world, and you serve a king. These are the things that we need from each other right now, especially right now. These are things that I've struggled with myself, and I appreciate your prayers and encouragement as I strive to do better myself. But I hope that this and these words and these guidelines, you might say, these thoughts have been helpful for you. I love you all.